dead giveaway that someone grew up poor. Story 1 message to all users: this is a reminder to please read and follow our rules Reddit content policy when posting and commenting. Especially remember Rule 1: be polite and civil. Be polite and courteous to each other. Do not be mean, insulting, or disrespectful to any other user on the subreddit. Do not harass or annoy others in any way. Do not catfish. Catfishing is the luring of somebody into an online friendship through a fake online persona. This includes any lying or deceit. You'll be banned if you're homophobic, transphobic, racist, or bigoted in any way. I'm a bot, and this action was performed automatically. Please contact the moderators of this subreddit message compose. Or ask if you have any questions or concerns. Story 2: if somebody points out that you have or are wearing a nice insert item, an explanation of how much you saved on it, rather than just taking the compliment. What was 30 off and I had a gift voucher, so it came down to... Story 3: I grew up pretty poor, not full-blown abject poverty, but my mother had multiple jobs to keep us housed, for example. I learned to be really frugal and, whilst I'm earning above my station now, often struggle to justify the purchase of simple luxury for myself. E.g., if I see a t-shirt I really like and it's maybe $30, I can very easily afford it, but I'll consider the value of it for a long time before inevitably putting it back. As well as this, due to the hardships of my childhood, I often assume other people aren't doing as well as I am. As such, I will usually offer to pay for meals, drinks out with friends or family. Story 4: I still save disposable containers, spaghetti jars, butter tub, etc. to store leftovers in or for taking lunch. My partner, who has never been poor, doesn't understand why I keep trash and reuse it. Story 5: I still eat poor people foods. Grew up in GA as white trailer trash, and at some point in my childhood, I had to sleep with tape over my mouth because of not wanting bugs in my mouth while sleeping. Now I'm in NYC, making 6 figures, and yet I still want Craft MC over some homemade or restaurant from scratch thing. Equally, I could care less about most fancy foods and am perfectly happy with garbage like a chili cheese dog. Story 6: wanting to hang dry clothes because the dryer uses too much electricity, or freaking out over turning on a light for longer than a second. Edit: this was a comment thread to defend not using a dryer, evidently. Oh, I personally do both, so I really don't care if you do or don't or why you think it's better. Story 7: being able to innovate at the last second. Can't find a knife, grab the scissors. Can't find a pot lid, grab a plate. No paper towels, grab toilet paper. Story 8: not finding it gross to eat from open snacks chip bags, for example, that someone offers, and not being super picky about what food you're offered by others. Story 9: hoarding things they replace. Example is my current. Had a Keurig, replaced it with a regular drip-style coffee maker. Got gifted another Keurig, both are replaced coffee machines, and now collect dust just sitting on a shelf in the garage. I've found several things that he has replaced out of necessity or upgrade that still sit around. I guess just in case we are working on donating these items. While I'm encouraging donation, he's still hesitating. Oh. Story 10: I am unable to pull the trigger on things that would update my home, like my kitchen is ugly. Oh, bought the house with an ugly dated kitchen. I have the money to update, but I can't bring myself to pull the trigger because what if an emergency happened and I needed that money for something else? I have a really hard time replacing things that aren't broken. Story 11: usually treating waiters well. Good work ethic. They're not entitled brats. Work to get where they are. Humble, give, and receive criticism well. Work better with others. Story 12: I learned which of my kids' friends were poor when they routinely offered to pay for Six Flag ticket, for lunch, for gas when we invited them to go with our family. Only the poor kids would offer. Wealthy kids never offer to pay. Cost money is not a big deal for them. This was eye-opener for me. And I always paid for our guests, regardless if they offered to pay or not. Story 13: I can't throw out toiletries if there is any left, even a shampoo or something that I don't like. I'll use it to the very end unless I can give it to someone who will use it. Story 14: when I was younger, I used to, if we ever went out to eat, very, very rare, I would always order the cheapest thing on the menu regardless. If I was taken out with my uncle who was really well off, it was like Christmas if there was enough food in the fridge to make an actual proper sandwich. Living the week before my mom's payday, on 12p noodles every night. To this day, I still absolutely love noodles and eat them at every opportunity. I'm pretty well off now, work my off, and have my own business with 8 staff members, and I have a policy that if my staff ever get really badly into financial hardship or struggling to feed their family for any reason, I will pay them for that day there. And then, or however many days they need it before anyone says I should pay them better, I pay too. 50 more per hour than the minimum wage, which also means I've had the same 8 staff for the past 4 years. Story 15: my giveaway. was one evening when I returned home from shopping. I found two neighbor women on my porch in a panic. One was crying, and they told me they were going to call the police. It turns out that they had come to visit and panicked when the kitchen light was on, but I didn't open the door. They thought something bad had happened to me. The thing was, to them, one never ever left lights on when going out because of the electric bill. I am just afraid to come home to a dark house, so I'll leave them on. Story 16, nothing screams I grew up poor, but now have money to burn than people who are completely decked out in branded stuff like Gucci, Prada, Armani, and LV. And nothing screams I grew up rich and have lots of money than a ratty 30-year-old wax barber jacket. Or at least that is how it is in Europe. Story 17, being extremely cautious, borderline hesitant to spend money on anything. Growing up, I'd visit friend houses and always stare at the expensive stuff they had, even when the family would invite me to sit on the couch or to eat dinner with them. I was always hesitant. I was so scared of breaking something and needing to pay them back for it. Even now that I'm almost an adult, I still watch every cent I spend. If I do buy anything remotely expensive, I spend ages justifying it first. I can never just spend money and think no more about it. Story 18, while I used to know a woman that would eat, drink as much as she could whenever it was free or already included in the price, buffets and stuff, not at other people's places. She wasn't a rude person one time. I was still a little kid. We, my family, and that woman were at a restaurant, and after dinner the waiter asked if we wanted espresso coffee, and she said yes. My grandmother asked her why, since she had complained before that it was bad for her health reasons. And she replied with, I have to drink it since it's already included. Story 19, I'm poor. So, I should know a few, assuming they remained as such, and there are always exceptions to anything in life because you are an individual, but it's likely the tired look to one's face and eyes, showing the stresses of life. While anyone can keep their teeth clean, poor teeth is normally indicative of people who are not properly given guidance growing up to care for their teeth. Typical in poorly run households, in my opinion. Story 20, I can't stand people being hungry. I lived in a dilapidated, shelled-out tuna kind of trailer in Rhode Island. Particle board floors, exposed insulation, missing ceiling panels, exposed wiring, no hot water, no heat, had to cut for the stove or carry it by hand from down the street. Our only appliance was a microwave. The grocery store was probably at least a 3-hour walk away. Food pantry was an hour walk away. And all it was a wooden shack kind of thing, with a few fold-out tables lined with cans and bagged cereal. No produce, no milk, just preserved foods. All the food we had in the house fit into a nightstand in the kitchen. The fridge was usually empty. If we were lucky, we had a gallon of milk, or some eggs, or hot dogs, or bread. I used to sit down and eat fruit or beans out of the can. Only time I usually ate was at school, or at a friend's house, or visiting family. We had no vehicle. Parent I was living and didn't want to work. Always made excuses. I think they were schizophrenic. Person they were dating was doing heroin. The water from the well was so freezing cold. Pouring it over your head to wash your hair gave you the most unimaginable headache. Just this horrid pain. I was always dirty. It was bad, really bad. I never tell people details about this. I might delete this comment even. It was bad. I can't stand people being hungry. It eats at me. I give my food away if someone at work doesn't have any lunch. They're not struggling. They just forgot to bring it. I give them my food and insist I already ate or I brought extra. Sometimes I bring extra just in case someone needs something to eat. One of my employees once forgot to bring lunch, so I told him I was already ordering out and I bought a pizza. I can't handle people being hungry or people being cold, but hunger is definitely the worst. I get by on very little now. To feed 2 people, I spend maybe $60 a week on groceries. I never buy myself things, but I'm always quick to assure my husband should get himself something he wants because I don't want to see him without. Hopefully I'm moving soon. Going to get a camper, perfectly content with that. Where I'm going, ITLLB on another person's property, and they're going to hook me up with electricity and water. I'm good with that, excited. We want to get either one of those nice modern trailers or a ranch-style home in the future. Rather the trailer, honestly. Oh, and I'm always putting away money. I always feel like I have no money even if I do. I'm scared of an emergency happening, so I'm always putting away for tomorrow. If this was really a proper response to this post. I just kind of let it out, I guess. Hello, sorry if this doesn't fit. Story 21, poor people make room for others. I grew up poor, always uncertain of my place, always ready to give up my seat for someone else now. When I go out jogging, I notice it's the people with modest clothes who are looking around them to make sure they're not in anyone's way. And if they are, they simply move other. But when someone with nice clothes, or an attractive appearance, or God forbid, an expensive baby carrier, is on the lane, they will absolutely refuse to acknowledge or make way for anyone else. And if you get too close while trying to avoid their rude asses, they give you ugly stares. Story 22, I always treat my paycheck like it's my last one and hoard as much money as I can and pay off any debts. I'm always bracing for the day the money's just gone. Story 23, growing up, we never had a dishwasher or a dryer. I'm in my 40s with 3 kids and a 3-story house now, and I still never had any of those because, in my head, that's only for rich people. I know we'll look at some dishwasher ads tomorrow for 2 minutes before closing the browser and saying to myself, don't make yourself lazy now. That. Story 24-1, hoarding food, toilet paper, etc. People who go from super poor to being middle class trend to hoard food, as if every grocery store will suddenly lock their doors. 2. Unwilling to throw food away even when it expires. 3. Refusing to throw away anything, and I mean anything. Story 25, I have to make myself buy new clothes. 20 for a shirt, no way. 20 for food, no question. Clothes didn't matter when getting to eat or not dependent on how much change you could find. I now make well into 6 figures, and I always give money to charities and GoFundMes because I think back to when just 10 was enough to give me hope and change my situation for the day. God has blessed me to be in a position where I can give back. Story 26, overcompensating. Couldn't have Legos for Christmas as a kid, and now have every set, dropping money for your kids to have all of the things you wished you'd had, with both experiences and material things. Didn't have clothes or shoes that were in style or that fit properly. So now every closet in the house is completely filled to the max. Story 27, keeping the heat really cool in the winter and really warm in summer. I didn't know AC existed until I was older. By the way, I would eat government cheese in a heartbeat now. Story 28, you never leave food on your plate. Food is never wasted. You eat leftovers and leftovers. It upsets me terribly to go to a restaurant, especially a buffet, and see people walk out leaving a pile of food on their plate. It's downright sinful to me to waste food. Story 29, happy to get something free, even if it's something they don't like, because they know someone who might like it. H-E-B, a Texas grocery store, gives away 1 free item every Sunday if you have the app on your phone. 2 Sundays ago, they had a free salad kit. I don't like salad, so I just gave it to my sister. Story 30, saving old butter bowls to be used for leftovers. This is more of an old person move. Most elderly in the Midwest grew up some level of poor or frugal. Story 31, my wife and I both grew up pretty poor, not super poor, but lower middle class. We have money as adults and are better off than our parents were raising us and our respective siblings. We don't spend much money on ourselves, but we're pretty obsessive about making sure our kids get to have the lives, experiences, and possessions we dreamt of but never got. Story 32, hoarding food. I never knew when would have a bad run and not eat well for a while. So now I stockpile food, human and pet food, whenever there's a good sale on or I have a bit more money on me. At any time, I've usually got 1 to 3 months worth of food in the house. In the same vein, poor appetite control. I eat whenever I'm hungry, and the longer I try to go without eating, the panickier I get. I've only just been made aware this is likely a result of being hungry for long periods when I was younger. Story 33, not wanting to use new items, whether it's shoes, clothes, towels, toiletries, perfumes, etc., especially if you have more of the same, like wearing a second pair of older shoes as opposed to your new ones, because they're nice new and you think about what you spent cost-wise. Story 34, grew up poor enough that on my single mother's payday, we got to eat meat for the first time since the beginning of last month. Afterwards, our spaghetti was called vegetable spaghetti, also got milk, and when that gallon or so ran out, we would use Kool-Aid for cornflakes just to wet them before eating. Also, when the bread ran out, I would put peanut butter and jelly in a cup and eat that with a spoon. Hand-me-downs were the best hand-me-ups, and we would hardly have clean clothes to wear to school, because living in a one-bedroom apt, we couldn't afford to wash the laundry all the time. 3 girls was not easy to take care of on my mom's 3 different paychecks, but she would have benefited from getting help, but never did. Too prideful, she said she didn't want sink that low, but it would have been nice just to get a proper meal all the days of the month instead of the first 5. Anyways, a lot of these other responses resonate with me. Definitely don't throw food away and hoard it as well. Think twice or 3 times before any frivolous purchase of an overpriced shirt or shoes or whatever. Definitely save money like it is going out of style, and never spend more than I can pay off in a month unless there's no way around it. And I usually save double the amount before I purchase at expense. I am doing well for myself, and poverty seems like a bad dream of someone else's life, but I can't shake the feeling of not having enough, as well as having too much. Definitely a conundrum. Story 35, you simply don't spend money, because you don't know what the could happens if you do. You didn't have any and have always seen other around you, saying you did not spend money. Story 36, really niche, but throwing random things together and calling it a meal. My father used to and still does, despite being comfortable, make rice and throw whatever meat in there and give it to me for lunch. Concoctions were a staple, lol. Story 37, constantly turning off lights, checking faucets for drips. My mom's treat for us was Kraft Mac, peas, and either ground beef or tuna. I still eat that to this day, eating chicken thighs instead of breasts. Story 38. I've heard stories of old Holocaust survivors who put food crumbs in their pockets and eat them later or bury their jewelry if there was a local burglary. Story 39. At the dinner table growing up, our napkins was actually a roll of toilet paper. I am in awe of napkins every time I sit down to eat and every time I buy napkins in the store. Story 40. Not realizing how poor you are when you come around someone who was raised with money. Some things I realized because those poor habits follow you. Dirty hygiene, not poor just dirty like they shower, but don't know to clean behind their ears or fingernails. Poor choices of food, unhealthy fast food. Talks think small, exposing they're unfamiliar with the vast world around them, what it may offer. I grew up rich relative to my community, but I got around some millionaire CEOs' old money. Through work experiences, realized a few things. Story 41. Grew up poor. My brother and I used to eat less during the week to be able to afford a bottle of Coca-Cola in the weekend. Now, very well off. There are a few things I do that raise eyebrows every now and then. My wife and I live in a very fancy place, but could afford a property twice the price. We spend without counting much on 5-star hotels and Michelin restaurants, but we treat people with respect and kindness. I befriended a local homeless and help him every month. This one is the dead giveaway. I think I have a lot of clothes and very fancy suits, but I wear them until they have holes that people can see. I speak a lot in public, so those are the okay clothes day. But otherwise, if my jeans do not have a longer than 5 centimeters hole, they're on. Story 42. When I have something like makeup or sometimes even my acne medicine, I'll use less when it starts to get empty, and sometimes I'll literally stop using it just so I don't have to buy it again, but can still remind myself I have it if I want and need it. Story 43. Eating really fast. Apparently, people who grow up in a home with not enough food learn to eat really fast before someone can take it from them. Consistent with people I've known. Story 44. The behaviors I noticed as that they're not really wrapped up in material possessions or bragging about what they have. They're some of the most grateful people to exist because they're used to going without. That being said, the word to describe them is humble. Story 45. I have a friend who grew up poor. She ended up a specialist DR and married a surgeon. Neither of them are show-off kinds of people. Watching her try and come to terms with their disposable income is hilarious. I think she's actually a little bit traumatized by how much money they have. Story 46. In my experience, the poor are typically pretty humble and down-to-earth because they understand the struggle and they've had to make do with what little they have. They're usually problem solvers as well. They've had to learn a variety of new skills in order to be able to repair things on their own, i.e. clothing, plumbing, electrical, automotive, computers, etc., because there just isn't any money for a repairman. They're also typically very creative and have a variety of low-cost hobbies, i.e. reading, writing, drawing, etc., because they can't afford vacations. They constantly invent new ways of cooking staple foods because they're tired of eating the same thing day after day. So they find ways to make affordable meals more exciting. They reuse things and find new uses for them as well. They shop at thrift stores and buy their items from the bargain bin. The selection usually sucks, but you take what you can get and afford. They're usually the ones who will take extra shifts and work long hours without complaining because it's necessary in order to keep the lights and the heat on. They're survivors because they have to be. There's no alternative. Story 47. I don't know. But for me, it's being a self-centered, spoiled as adult. Might sound like the opposite should be true, but growing up without everything my friends had and stuff was... Story 48. I still cannot throw away the free packets of condiments I get from fast food. We used to not have any food in the fridge, so I would eat those packets. Taco Bell picante sauce actually had chunks in it and were extra large packets. They were my favorite thing to eat when I had nothing to eat. Story 49. These are very interesting to read. My family has always been very frugal, but my family also has wealth. My grandfather grew up dirt poor, but worked his way up from groundskeeper to president of a company. Wish you could still do that. These habits don't die. Story 50. Glasses cups facing down in cupboards on tea towels, hand towels in the cupboard. So many pot spans are scratched, but keep just in case. Keeping old holy clothes to use as playwear clothes and eventually cut up for rags. Keeping all sheets you've ever had and might use the good ones on the guest bed or as curtains. Learning new skills just in case like car repairs, crochet nitsu, basic plumbing and electrical, keeping old phones, TVs, streaming devices, just because yours might break. I have a ton. Story 51. They are creatively thrifty. We have the power to make small ingredients into a full meal and Makavara salutation for most problems to make things last for as long as possible. Story 52. I still shop for bargains and deals in the supermarket in bulk because it won't be that cheap again for a while, especially meat that can be portioned and frozen. Story 53, I'm feeling ashamed every time somebody gives me anything, even for a birthday, because I grew up too poor to get gifts, so now I always feel like they're wasting their money on me. Story 54, I have many traits that carried over. I am very skeptical of being outside in public and do not trust anyone I do not know personally. I finish my food at restaurants every time. I always sit in a position within my living room as to where I can see the entire house and every window door. Small noises like crinkling plastic or shuffling feet annoy me greatly because it disturbs the silence and makes it harder to hear things outside the house. I have weapons strategically placed all over the house. I have grown to develop a zero-tolerance policy for discrimination, hypocrisy, and the wasting of anyone's time. If you smell bad, hey, raise a clean towel, first door down the hall on the left, hop to, and I also keep my living quarters very dimly lit. Bright lights bother me. Story 55, when they express joy and appreciation over things, gestures others wouldn't tend to acknowledge, notice, or maybe even feel let down and disappointed by, straight gratitude. Story 56 for me, it's how we treat waitstaff. I grew up poor, and I treat them with dignity and respect. I talk to them like I'm asking them a favor instead of telling them what to do. I have had dinner with people who are rich, and they treat them like servants. I'm not saying necessarily rude to them, but they're extremely comfortable talking down to them in a very confident but somehow not rude way. Plenty of poor people will treat waitstaff like, but it's a different kind of thing than the way rich people do it. Story 57, I find it really difficult to throw away jars, ice cream containers, etc. I wear clothes until they're literally falling apart. I ride my bike everywhere unless I absolutely need to carry stuff. I didn't grow up poor, but my mother grew up on a farm and had a lot of extremely frugal habits. Story 58, I now make decent money while we struggled growing up. I never will purchase new clothes for myself to the point I'm still wearing clothes from high school. I'm in my early to mid-20s. I will never purchase a luxury item. I only shop sales for food at the grocery store, and I never ever throw anything out, which can also be a problem. We also did not have electricity sometimes growing up, so sleeping or existing in sweltering or frigid temperatures is easy for me. Story 59, I don't buy clothing that much. Why? Just feels like a waste. I also have a very basic food palate. I refuse to eat at fancy restaurants. My wife and I make six figures now, but I guess I have imposter syndrome. Story 60, appreciating what they have, even when it doesn't seem like much, giving their time to those who are less fortunate, and not ignoring people like beggars like they don't exist, even if they're unable, unwilling to help out with cash, food, etc. I feel this was asked in a derogatory way. Not cool to look down on people whose lives didn't start out with everything. Story 61-1. In my country, a meal with big carb starch portions is called a poor's meal. Growing up, we didn't have enough money to buy meat, so our meals had a lot of rice, potatoes, etc. I am vegetarian by choice now, and I still love my carbs, so I still include a lot of them on my plate too. Never say no to a free meal. I eat as much as I can at work events. LOL 3. When I eat out, I always eat all the food on my plate. I hate throwing away food. Story 62. They make decent money, but still drive an older car because there's nothing wrong with it. My car is 8 years old and I'ma drive it at least 2 more years. It's in great condition aside from the food splatters my autistic son made in the back seat. I have very little interest in driving a new car, just because I can. I bought it brand new, and she's still going strong. Story 63, flashy stuff. The people that come from money don't seem to be as concerned with having flashy jewelry, luxury cars, designer handbags, or whatever. The folks who came up from poverty seem to be the ones buying the stuff that lets everyone else know they have money now. Story 64, my mom grew up in an orphanage, so she rewashes shower curtains. Gross, I throw them away. She gets mad because she's just ghetto and doesn't spend money on quality she buys from the dollar store. Not because she's poor, she's an RN, has a home and plenty of, but she prefers cheaply made items, quantity versus quality. She makes minimalist food. She's from India and makes scraps, and no, she's not veg. She just makes stuff that isn't substantial and more scarce. She's also got a very illiterate view on things, and how she puts herself out there just makes no sense for someone who came up in life, still behaves very backwards. Many people have tried to talk to her and help. She's very egotistical for no good reason, and I can understand her generation was weirdly different, but her same generation that settled in the U.S. are not all like her, and many people can't understand her. So now she's bitter in life because all she does is talk a lot about people without ever improving herself. So nobody has time for her anymore. People we've known for 45 years to our own family, just nobody wants to touch that. There was a time where I felt bad, but if that's who she is, then that's who she is. Story 65, I think everyone who goes out on a vacation or weekend getaway is rich. Like, hotels are expensive. I can't even pay rent. How are y'all paying airfare, hotels, food? alcohol, vacation outfits, etc. Story 66, incredibly stingy with sales and deals on things. This is also just a good habit to have to save money. But my grandparents grew up pretty poor, and now my grandma is always checking for sales and deals and the prices of absolutely everything. Even if it's not something she's buying, he's always checking for how much it costs if it's on a sale, or if there's any deals or coupons for it. Story 67, eating poor people food as comfort food. I make enough now to not need to be super frugal when I shop, but I still make meatloaf fairly often the cheap and easy version my working, single-parent mother made when I was growing up. Story 68, all of these are middle-class behaviors. How people treat loans is way more indicative. Gross generalizations based on my observations, many of my friends who grew up poor are afraid of them or have anxiety about them. People with lower to middle class upbringing may rely on them for financing purchases like cars and holidays. People who grew up in upper middle class can utilize them properly for personal gain. Story 69, eating all food on their plate, even when full, and getting anxiety over any food waste. Being able to afford new shoes, but choosing to repair old shoes with duct tape and keep them going as long as possible. Choosing to layer on clothing jacket hoodies versus a single winter coat. Story 70, go without so someone else will have some. My wife still can't understand why. When she picks off my plate, I offer her the whole plate. I grew up with 5 sisters and several nieces and nephews around. There was always someone smaller who was hungrier than I was. Story 71, I grew up extremely poor, and I don't do any of the things listed in this thread. In fact, I do the opposite. I go way overboard on material things, especially with food. Bad habit of over-ordering and overfilling my plate. I never eat it all and much at it now, but always an issue for me. I used to hoof pizza down so fast. Because if I was slow, I never got a second piece. Another X, I have hundreds of pairs of shoes. Story 72, always trying to buy the least expensive thing, to their detriment, or spend the least amount of money. Even when they have the money, causing them to spend much more, even double of the expensive thing when plan fails. Story 73, eating every last thing on their plate. Regardless of the meal and regardless of the size of the meal, my parents, my brother, and I do that. I am now a multi-business owner, but still cringe at my children leaving food on their plates. Story 74, they often go on shopping sprees and generously gift all their friends even when there is no actual need to do so, even if they don't have enough for themselves. Story 75, not throwing away leftovers. I clear my plate every single meal. My wife doesn't. She'll leave some food, throw it out when she's done. Food waste makes me very uncomfortable. She doesn't quite get it. Story 76, grew up poor here, but I guess I'm now barely middle class. I don't spend on any luxury items, avoid designer clothes, and generally don't like to spend money. I do work in healthcare, and I see people die all the time, so I went out and got myself a Corvette, only luxury item I have ever owned. Story 77, I've never bought a brand new car despite now being easily able to pay cash for one. I can only justify a model with a few luxuries by calculating the relatively small cost per year over the 20 years I will keep it. I only buy a newer car when the maintenance on the old one starts costing more than the depreciation on a new one. Story 78, constantly checking their bank account, checking a menu before eating out where possible, holding on to things regardless of the condition, and having to justify purchases. These are things I do. I didn't grow up poor, but we were a single working parent household until I was 11. As an adult, I can look back and see where my mom cut corners to get us by. As a child, I didn't know we were broke. Story 79, my granddad grew up in bad poverty conditions. Drunken dad blowing the wages down the pub every week, etc. His house is absolutely full of junk. He finds stuff out on his walk and picks it up. Just in case he ever needs it in the future, he won't throw anything away. Both grandparents are still alive. Mortgage-free on what could be a really lovely bungalow, great pensions, lots of money in savings. Yet he will come home with a broken dog poo bin. Just doesn't stack up.